Hey coders, welcome back. This is project number 5 on the Mission to Mars challenge. For this one, we're going to have the rocket land safely on the planet, and so the player will need to control how the rocket moves, but the rocket's always going to be trying to be pulled down by gravity, and so the player is going to need to navigate the mountains to arrive safely at the landing site. And so we think this will be a pretty fun one, maybe a little bit challenging. The nice thing about this one is it's easy for you to make the game more challenging or more easy depending on how you want to draw your levels. Okay, so first thing we're going to need is a rocket ship sprite. So let's get rid of this cat. See you later, cat. And then choose a sprite. Rocket ship. Let's look at the costumes. We're only going to need 2 for this one. Let's do rocket ship A and rocket ship E. So let's turn off that one, but this one I think is just a little bit too big. So let's shrink it down a little bit and then try to center it again and go back and forth between these two. I think that looks pretty good for the purposes of this program. So come back to code, and so the rocket's going to appear on the top of the screen. That's probably a little bit too big, so let's change that down. 40 maybe, let's do 20 because then you'll have more room on the screen to move around on. Let's bring in a backdrop. I like the nice stars one, so pick stars again if you want to. And we have our backdrop, and all we need now is the surface of the Mars. And so for this one we're going to draw our own sprites. So come down here to choose a sprite and paint. The first thing we want to do, now if you just start painting right here, this is called vector artwork. And so if you draw a shape, for example, when you highlight it later on, you can adjust it like this. That's not going to work for our purposes of this game. So let's delete that and convert it to a bitmap, because what we want is a nice solid looking surface of Mars. So let's pick a Mars color, and I think it's a smart idea to use a nice solid, not solid, but an easy color to remember in case you want to add more later on. So I'm going to do color 0, saturation 100, brightness 100, just to get a nice simple red color. Okay, let's switch to the paintbrush tool. We're just going to draw the horizon of what we think the surface of Mars might look like where this ship is going to land. Okay, so here's a nice one. Keep in mind where you want the ship to land. You probably want that to be a flat space. So I'm going to make a flat space here, and then keep drawing all the way from the left side of the screen to the right side of the screen. And you can see that it goes across. Now the sprite is not centered right now, so you can just move it over here, and then it'll look right on the screen. And then pick the paint bucket tool and click underneath here to fill underneath. Okay. So our sprite is down there. Let's move it around just to get it to the bottom of the screen here. Okay, so what's going to happen in this program, when you hit the green flag, the rocket's going to start coming down, and the player's going to have to make it navigate left and right to get it where it wants to, to the safe landing zone. Now let's make the safe landing zone a little bit more obvious. So come back to the sprite here. Let's pick a different color. Let's do 30 on the color, saturation, brightness 100, just to make this an obvious spot that this is where you're supposed to land. I'm going to up that brush a little bit, maybe make that a 30, and just make a nice thick green line here. I want it thick because we're going to be checking to see if it's touching a color, and sometimes, oh, what is that? I'm going to hit undo because that went crazy. Let's just draw a nice thick green line like this. Okay, that's the safe landing zone, and when we hit the green flag, we're going to maneuver the rocket onto that spot. Okay, so let's do the maneuvering code. Click on your rocket ship, click on code, and we want it to start in the top middle of the screen every time. So on the event, green flag clicked, do a motion code, block code. We want it to go to 0, because that'll be right in the middle of the screen, left and right, and then 180, and that'll be right at the top of the screen. Literally off the top of the screen. That's okay. So whenever you hit the green flag, it's going to appear right there. But it's going to immediately start coming down, so we'll leave it like that. We want the program to run for as long, or the code to run as long as the program is running, so come click on Control, drag a row drag over a forever loop. Let's have it change the way it looks so it's a little bit animated. It's going too fast, but we'll slow that down. And then let's put in an event here. No, a control, sorry. And a control that says wait. And let's try 0.2 seconds, something like that. So pretty fast. And we've got the rocket animated. Now the next thing we want to do is for it to start moving down. So come under motion. After it waits 0.2 seconds and it switches costumes, let's change the Y. Now make sure you grab this one that says change Y, not set Y. Because we're not going to tell the program where to go every time, we just want the sprite to move. Now, if I change this by 10, can you guess what's going to happen? Doesn't look like anything's happening. That's because it's trying to go off the top of the screen. So you can see the program actually is telling the sprite to move up by 10, but once it hits the stop, it doesn't. Once it hits the top, it kind of stops trying to go off the top. We don't want it to go off the top though, so we want a negative number here. Let's pick -2 as kind of a slow number, just because we don't want this one to be too hard. So now when the program is running, the rocket's slowly coming down, and we're just going to have the player navigate to arrive safely on the green spot. Okay, let's hit stop there and think about how we want the program to move. So we don't want to use the mouse on this one. We could put that in here real easy. Go to mouse pointer, for example, and see how easy that program would be. Every 0.2 seconds it goes where the mouse is. That's too easy for this type of a project. So we don't want the mouse pointer. What we want to do is use the keyboard for this one. So under events, you have one here that says when spacebar is pressed. So you could, for example, attach this code to take it off the green flag and put space here. So now when you hit the spacebar, it starts over and over again. We're going to leave that there and change this, because Scratch knows all the different buttons on your keyboard that you could press to interact with your program. Let's do left and right first of all. So when the left arrow is pressed, can you think about that for a second? What do we want to happen when the left arrow is pressed? Well, we want to change the motion. So the left arrow is pressed, we're going to change the X value. And if we want it to move to the left, what are we going to put here? A nice negative number. Now, we don't want this game to be too hard to control, so we want that number to be kind of small. So now, I know you can't see this, but I'm going to hit the left arrow on my keyboard, and the rocket moves to the left. Let's duplicate this code and make it for the right arrow. For the right arrow, we don't want to change X by -5, we want to change it by 5. So when I click the right arrow, it's going to run this code, and you can't see me hitting it, but trust me, I'm hitting the right arrow. Left arrow and right arrow. All right. We could leave it at that, and let's just get back to our program. I'm going to let that go for a second, and you can see when it hits that green arrow, that green landing zone though, nothing's going to happen. So let's put in some code here. That's going to be a control issue where we want it to check to see if it's landed safely. So let's hit stop, come to control, and say if. And we want this inside our forever loop. So if, go under sensing, touching, let's do touching color on this one. So if touching color, now if you tap on this blue-green color, it's going to ask you to set what color it's going to check for. So remember how I said pick a nice even number, 30 and 100 and 100? That's the way that will make sure it's the exact same color as before. Or you can come down here and pick this little eyedropper tool and click on the screen, and that grabs the color 30, 100, 100 as well. Okay, so if it's touching the color green, what do we want to happen? Well, let's let everyone know that you've won the game. So under looks, instead of say hello for 2 seconds, but drag that block over, and let's just say success for 2 seconds, and then let's end the game. So come under control and hit stop all. So let's run the flag, drag it over here just to test it out. Now you'll see when it hits the green, it says success, and it's game over. We won the game. Okay, but what happens if you touch the red? If you touch the red, that would be very bad. So let's duplicate this code. And let's hit stop. Click on the green. Do the eyedropper. That's the easiest way to grab that red. And what do we want to happen if it touches the red? Well, you could put a message in there for the player, but I don't want the robot to keep flying after that. So I'm going to take that out there, and I'm just going to stop the program. So now, if it touches red, it's just as game over. And the player will never see that success phrase. Okay? And the rocket stops going down towards the bottom of the screen. Okay, so if we hit the green flag, we now have a game where you can land safely on the surface of Mars. Let's add something in here though, because if you're like me, you might think that that rocket coming down like that is way too slow. So let's put in an event here and give the player an option to speed up the rocket with the down arrow. So under motion, for down arrow, let's change the Y value. And we want it to go down, so it's going to be a negative number. Oh, probably not negative 10. Let's do negative 5. And maybe we want the player to be able to slow down the descent a little bit. So we're going to change that to add when an up arrow is pressed, change Y by 5. You'll notice with these key commands that those will work even if the program isn't running. You'd have to add some serious code in here to stop that from happening. Something like a variable here that sets that the program is running, and then when you hit the arrows here, to check that variable to see if it is running, and if it's not running, then to not move. But that's an advanced thing. We're not going to do that today. What I do want to do today, though, is mix it up a little bit. So come back to the sprite here. Let's add some more costumes. So here's one. Let's draw another one, though. So let's paint another one. Convert to bitmap. Change the color to 0, 100, 100. Draw in a new surface of the Mars. Maybe this is a nice lumpy, bumpy one. And the player's going to have to come way down here. Let's fill that in. And grab the color. Let's do 30. Oh, you can't do it that way. So 30, 100, 100. And let's, oh no, not that. Let's grab the paintbrush and put the green landing zone over here for this one. And then let's do one more. So we'll come down here and let's paint one more. And for this one, I'm going to make this one super hard. Convert to bitmap, change it to red, and I'm going to make this one kind of in a cave, where the only safe place for the rocket to land on this part of Mars is deep down inside that cave. So I'm going to fill that red, switch to the color green, and draw the landing zone over here. Yeah, that should be a lot harder. As you can imagine, the player's going to have to bring the rocket in and may actually even slow it down as it tries to fit through that space there. Okay, one last thing to do for this one. Okay, and the last thing I want to do on this one is come back to your code, and on an event, when you hit the green flag, come to looks and just hit the next costume. So now every time you start the game, you will have a different map. You'll have the next map to land on. And this is where you could have a lot of fun with this one. You could add in 10, 15, 20 different surfaces of Mars to land on. Well, here's our little project. I can speed it up a little by hitting the down. I can hit the up arrow to maneuver a little bit better. Let's see if I can beat the cave one. All right, here we go. And then the down arrow, left arrow. Okay, so here's the challenge for you if you wanted to make this a little bit extra hard. Make it go faster, and that would make it obviously a lot harder. And then another challenge, if you're an upper grade student, you might want to think about creating a variable to control the speed of the rocket, and maybe the longer it falls, the faster it goes. So I'm not going to tell you how to do that one, but that'd be a fun challenge for you to try, and maybe add in some sound effects. So I hope you had fun with this one, and can't wait to see what's next. Thank you.